All right, welcome to a Lunchtime Bite. My name is Kyle Newell. I'll be talking about how much income do you need to retire? It is an important question, and it is one that doesn't always have the most straightforward answer. But I hope to give you some ideas and some ways to go about figuring out how much income you need to be able to retire. Before I do that, though, let me share a story. Recently, my son and I, my son's 7 year old, and loves movie nights. We love to be able to watch movies, all different sorts of movies, mostly kids' movies, animated movies, all of that. And he said, "Daddy, I really want to be able to watch a movie, but I want to watch it in a fort." I said, "Oh, a fort? Yeah, a fort," he says. And so I started thinking about, how can I go about building a fort? And I don't have all the materials. I certainly don't want to construct this big blocks and all of that inside my living room to be able to watch the movie with my son in the fort. So what do? I do like any good dad would do, and I start looking around the house for some makeshift items, things that would be easy to put up and easy to take down, certainly. And so I get the ladder out, I put a rake across it, I throw the blanket over the top, and just as we're about to sit down, of course, I can barely fit in it. If you don't know me or haven't met me in person, I'm about 6'8", so not the easiest to get into small tight places. And we get down, we have the popcorn, we're ready to start play. Sure enough, the dog jumps up and the whole thing comes tumbling down. And so this fort obviously was not constructed with the most sound strategy and architectural and engineering and all the things needed to create a fort. And I share that to correlate it to retirement. Oftentimes, I meet with people and they are creating a makeshift fort with their retirement plans. They've got a little bit of this, they've got a little bit of that, just kind of grabbing whatever is around the house, so to speak, to put that plan together. And so, one of the most pivotal parts to a retirement plan is obviously understanding how much income do you need to be able to retire. And so, there's three steps that I can think of to create figure out how much income you need to retire. There's not one set amount. Some people say, "Oh, you need X amount of dollars," or what have you. Certainly, that could be the case, but generally, it's specific to each person. And so, the first step that we talk about in figuring out how much income do you need in retirement is how much are you spending now. A lot of times, I'll ask people, if you could paint me a perfect picture of retirement, what would that look like? And they kind of sit back in the chair, they think about it for a second, and kind of shrug their shoulders, and they're not sure because they've never been there before. They've never been retired before, so it's hard to think about what it would look like. So a better question, I think, is what are you living on now? What are you spending now? And then that will then give you better guidance as to what you might spend later. So, for example, if you look at, let's say you work, a lot of folks I work with they work at Disney, but you don't have to work at Disney. But let's say you're making $100,000 a year. That's great. However, you're not living really on $100,000 a year. You have your deductions, you have your taxes, you have 401k, health insurance, all that stuff's taken out. So a smaller amount is hitting your bank account. So that's one way to look at how much are you living on now. The second way is a little bit more detailed, and that's going through a budget. So actually writing out, what are your expenses on a month by month, week by week, year by year basis, comparing that to what your income is. I generally recommend people to do that if they don't have their saving and debt in control. So if you have a lot of credit card debt, or there's debts that are piling up, then we need to go ahead and do that budget and get on a solid plan there. If you're not saving enough as well, that's another time where we need to get on a solid plan, because sure, maybe you're not piling up debt, you're able to pay your debts off, that's great. But if you're not saving and investing for the future, not even necessarily retirement, but just to have that cushion in your lifestyle, we want to make sure you do that. So step number one is figuring out how much are you living on now. Step number two is looking at, is there anything that we can take away from that budget? A lot of times, maybe you're 5, 10 years away from retirement, and you're thinking your mortgage is almost paid off. So the mortgage is an obvious one to take away at retirement. Now, there's some debate amongst the financial community whether paying off your mortgage before you retire or not is a good thing. I'll leave that for another day. But for the time being, let's assume that your mortgage is paid off and you're heading into retirement, that's one less thing that you're having to pay for. So maybe that's $1,000 or $1,500 a month. But remember, it's just your principal and interest. You're still going to be paying taxes and insurance. So maybe that's something that you can take away. Other things that maybe you can take away from your expenses would be child-related expenses. So it's college costs or college savings, or even childcare, things of that nature, even maybe some of your food budget as well. Again, depending on how granular you want to get with your expenses. But there are some things certainly you probably could take away. And step number 3 is, what are the things that you're going to have to add in? Health insurance is the first and foremost. Depending on when you want to retire, Medicare is 65. Before 65, you're going to have to get on some sort of private exchange, and those costs could be $500, $1,000 a month per person. So we want to think about adding back in health insurance costs, adding in, maybe you want to do some traveling, maybe that's another $500 a month or something of that nature. Maybe you want to do some charitable giving, or maybe you want to take up a hobby that's going to now create some extra costs. So we want to add in, step 3 is to add in any expenses that may start to eat into that budget as well. And so when we take those 3 things together, that then tells you how much do you need to live on in retirement, or how much income do you need in retirement. So let me give you an example. Let's go back to the person, they're making $100,000 a year. That's great. And they are planning for retirement, maybe 5 years away from retirement or so. And so the first thing that you want to do is, so you have your $100,000 income, and maybe 30,000 of that is taxes, both Social Security and federal taxes, health insurance payments. It's your 401k retirement savings. It's your health insurance. Maybe you're saving into a health savings account. All of that stuff combined, maybe that ends up being about $30,000 a year. So leaving you with about $70,000 a year in income is what you're living on. So step 1, you're living on about $70,000 a year of income. Step 2, are there things that you can take out of that budget? So if you're maybe 10 years away from retirement, maybe your kids are in college, or you're still helping them out a little bit. So let's take that out. Maybe that's a couple $1,000 a year, $5,000-$10,000 a year, or maybe it's your mortgage. Maybe you're close to paying off your mortgage, so let's take off your mortgage. Maybe mortgage is a better situation to look at, and so let's take off the mortgage. And so then that ends up being, so if we think about a monthly payment, so $70,000 a year ends up being, it's not exactly $6,000 a month, but it's close to, just rounding error, let's say $6,000 a month. Step 2, you're going to take out your mortgage. Let's say that's $1,500 a month. So now you're at $4,500 a month of what you need to live on. And then step 3, let's start adding those things back in that you're not paying for right now, or that you're going to have to pay for somewhat separately. Health insurance, maybe that's $500 a month. Maybe you want to do some traveling for another $500 a month. And so your total budget for a monthly basis in retirement is going to be $5,500 a month. And so then that gives you an example of how to go about thinking about how much income do you need in retirement. And then the other questions certainly start to come in, as far as, okay, well, I need $5,500 a month. Where does that come from? Maybe it's Social Security, maybe it's a pension, maybe it's your savings, investments. Maybe you start a side job, or maybe you start a business. Even though you're retired, maybe you still want to do some work. I have some clients that like to work at the theater, the local theater. I have others that are just doing like consulting gigs, just working on the things that they want to work on, and not necessarily having to go into the office or having to work, on a regular basis. And so you want to formulate, how do you start to create that income? That's another video for another day. And of course, if it's your savings investments, where do you start to pull from to create that? So lots of questions can start to spur from this, but I think the foundation is thinking through, how much income do you need to be able to retire? And that's just to cover your baseline expenses, and maybe some other things that you want to do, traveling and things of that nature. So my name is Kyle Newell. I hope you found that video helpful. I hope you found this lunchtime bite helpful. I'm trying to keep it quick so that you can get back to your day and be able to provide some value for you, some actionable insights as well. I would love to meet with you and be able to help out. Just drop me a comment or send me a message, and we can set up a time to talk via Zoom, in person. I'm in the Winter Garden, Florida, Orlando area, but I do meet with clients all over the country. And This has just been educational video. Of course, we don't. None of this is specific to you because I haven't met you specifically, but I hope you found value in it. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you real soon. Take care.